follow-up meeting to what happened back on June 1st. And the primary purpose of this gathering is to answer questions that have, I've got, yeah. Also, I don't know if it helps you, Brad, but I've got my headset on, so I don't need the pulpit mic or, anyway, answer questions and then tell you what the church leadership believes are the next steps, and we'll also field some additional questions if you have those. So, starting on the handout, I'm not going to read over all of it, but just in case you weren't here the first time, there's a recap of what we shared in that previous meeting. The bottom line is that we're out of space for some vital ministries, especially to children, youth, and small groups. That's having a detrimental effect on our current and perceived future needs. And the solution is a proposed building renovation expansion, about 15,000 square feet of new construction, most of it occurring behind the tall wall in the gym. On the screen, you'll see a floor plan of that. I think we've got a picture that we'll just leave up there to remind you of that. Produces a new secure children nursery area, also a new corridor through the gym and a rear entry. The youth would take over what is currently the Next Gen Room Children's Ministry area, have their own designated space, and then there's going to be additional classrooms, a prayer room, counseling rooms, music rehearsal space, and private offices. We entered into a design build agreement with Reliant South. They've completed all the architectural and structural drawings, and they have given us a guaranteed maximum price that is good for right now of $2.345 million. We also anticipate that there would be about 10% of that figure would go into 10% additionally on top of that would be for furnishings and equipment. But we also would like to have some contingency money, make some outdoor improvements, maybe in terms of parking, possible playground, and then also be equipped for what the new increased maintenance needs are of the church. So currently, you see what our assets are. They total almost $1.5 million from residual insurance proceeds and other gifts that have been made. That would mean that we need additional funding of about $1.6 million. So that's a quick recap. Now, I want to make a little bit of clarification as I reflected on the last meeting and some things that I don't think that I probably said as well as I could have. And this is the first one I've listed on your handout. It's that this building program benefits all ages. It's not just for children and youth. They're going to be the primary recipients, but it's going to help every one of us in one way or another. Some of the ways that it's going to help all of us, those of us, that's the line of the day, more mature folks that aren't in the children and youth ministries, is this going to help things on Sunday morning where we don't have the children checking in out here and all that. There's going to be a lot better traffic flow on those times, and I believe is going to give us a better opportunity for fellowship, to interact so that we're not just bumping up against everybody. There was a mention of this, and it's valid, but while we meet the code for the number of people we have in the building with the restroom space that we have, we know that sometimes is tough to manage on peak times. Well, we're going to pick up some additional restrooms. I don't know whether you know it or not, but there are restrooms in the Next Gen Room, okay, in the children's area. We don't advertise that because we really don't want you going in there on Sunday mornings because it affects some of our safety and security. But those now will be available because, again, it's not going to be a secure area for the children. So that picks us up an additional men and women's restrooms. And then the main benefit for those of us that aren't in children and youth ministries is just additional classroom space. There's going to be now multiple places that we could have Sunday school classes on Sunday morning, weekdays, weeknights, especially Wednesday night. We're going to have some new large spaces available on Sunday morning. Right now, the community room is hard to use because we got people rehearsing in there. We got children's ministry in there. That would now become available on Sunday mornings. Weekdays, we will now have the next gen room. Instead of having those little benches in there, that'll be furnishings for the youth. It'll be a really nice space for like large groups to meet, maybe a large Bible study. And then especially Wednesday nights is where adults are going to benefit. As I mentioned earlier, if you come here on Wednesday night this spring, you were subjected to sitting back on the concrete behind the wall in the storage area. We're now going to have multiple places of availability, including the community room and the worship center, which could be used either for rehearsals, or we could, if they're not using it, then we could use it for class space. Okay. The other thing I want to clarify, and this is from the time since the last meeting, from the time we said amen at that meeting to the present. From my point of view, and the other church leaders agree, we sense near, if not complete, agreement that this building program that we're proposing is needed, okay? And it's needed right now. And again, if you were here this week, Vacation Bible School, you see the need for it. And it's really not a question of what, but how do we go about doing it? And the bottom line for me is that everybody, we all agree this is what needs to be done. How do we go about doing it? When do we go about doing it? How do we fund it? That sort of thing, okay? Everybody across the board, even if we have differences of opinion on when to do it and how to do it, it's because we want to be good stewards of God's resources. That has been the prevailing theme that I have seen all across, and that I really celebrate as your pastor. That we have a church, we have built a church here that believes God has given us something really good and really special, and we just want to be good stewards of everything. And so the church leadership, including Rudy and myself, we just hope that we'll have your wholehearted support, even if we differ on some of the details of how we go about doing it. Most of you know I read on a daily basis the Wake Up Call, written primarily by J.D. Walt. He had a really pertinent one just a couple days ago. He was talking about church life and church ministries, and he talked about the difference in the church of resistance versus opposition. And some of you may have read that. And he talked about how resistance is okay, because when things change, there's always going to be some resistance. We're going to have some differences of opinion on how to go. And resistance is okay. That's all right. And that's what I sensed over the last few weeks. There's been a little bit of resistance, but it's been a really positive thing. It's helping us make better decisions. Now, on the other extreme is opposition, which just says no, and I'm going to stop it. And I have not sensed that at all in this congregation, in this matter or in any other matter. And so I think we're at a really good place. And while this is a difficult decision for us, I think we're at the best place in my 12 years of being here that we've ever been. I see church unity, and across the board, I think we're really prepared to do whatever God calls us to do now, whether it's this building program or whether it's something completely different. Can we all agree on that God has put us in a really good place? We're going to get there together, and we're going to be the very best and wisest stewards we can. Okay? So with that, we did have a series of questions. And as far as we know, we're going to try and answer every question that came in. We've kind of combined some of them, etc. And I do want to point out that we intended, along with Rudy and myself, of having Richard McCurdy, our church council chair, and Jason Walker, our trustees chair, both of those members of the church council, to be here to help answer these questions. Jason had to go out of town with his family, supporting one of his daughters out in Texas. And Richard McCurdy is a Delta airline pilot, and because of some things that happened in Atlanta this weekend, he's stuck in Madrid, Spain. Terrible place to be stuck, but he got stuck in Madrid, was supposed to have a flight home yesterday, but he didn't get home. And so as best we can, Rudy and I, we've talked at length with Richard and Jason. We'd all prepared together, so we're going to answer some of the questions for them. Also, I want to point out that sitting down here on the front row, y'all raise your hand, there's 4 members of the of the church council, and they will be here throughout the meeting and afterwards if there's some questions that arise. So let's get to it. Here's the first question. Could we please have softer chairs in the adult classrooms? I'm going to take that one. Done. One word answer. Done. Prior to the June 1st meeting, before that question was ever submitted, a church member made a generous donation to purchase 50 additional padded chairs, just like the ones you're seated in here. Those are going to be used in that large classroom, and they also now will be available when we add chairs in here, like for Easter, Christmas Eve. It'll give us those chairs that we can add. So they've already been ordered, and they have to be manufactured. And so as of right now, the delivery date is August, and so they're here. So can you give Craig a hand for that? I had nothing to do with it, but just, we've given you some space on your handout to take some notes. So under that first question, put done, okay? All right. Why is our largest classroom being reduced in size? Currently, 2 groups regularly fill it to near capacity. I answered my question, and so Rudy, you're going to get some of these next ones. He's going to take us through those.
All right, as Craig mentioned, the goal of the team that got together to work on this plan thought we need more classroom space. And so one of those near-term solutions was to take that classroom and divide it in 2 so that we could have more classroom space. But as we got this question, we sat around the table and we talked about it a little bit. We said, if we look at the opportunities before us, we actually have more classroom space in other spaces that were not previously available. So it is now the next gen room when that will become the youth space. The classrooms in that space will become available for adults to use, particularly throughout the week, but maybe even for some Sunday morning times. So we see opportunity for more classroom space there. And also you'll note on the plan that there are a couple classrooms in the hallway alongside the children's section. So if you're looking at the map to the far left, to the bottom part of the children's area, there are 2 classrooms. And depending on time of week, that is classroom space that could be utilized as adults as well. So our goal was more classroom space. The building plan that we have before us gives us that. And we took this feedback and we said, you know what? Maybe with the classroom space we currently have, we should reappropriate what we're going to do with it. So you'll note on this plan, just below the gym, the classroom space that we're talking about has X's along a line there, which was the wall. So the leadership team with whom we communicated suggested we remove that wall. So instead of making the classroom space that we currently have smaller, we're actually going to make it larger. So we're going to take the classroom space we have now and some of the storage behind it, we're going to expand into it. That space is going to be right around 1,000 square feet, which is, for those of you who were at the Transmitter campus, is going to be just a little bit bigger than what the chapel was over at Transmitter. So it will give us opportunity to accommodate that need, and it will also give us opportunity to have stair steps into space, right? From some of the smaller classroom spaces that we may have down in what is now the next gen room, moving up to there, and then as Craig referenced, we can then go into the fellowship hall. The other thing I'll highlight about the fellowship hall is, I know depending on what the need set is, the fellowship hall may feel kind of cavernous or it's a little echoey. Some of the incidental money that we're talking about, that additional 10% that we're seeking to raise, we can do that to deaden the sound in that room so that it doesn't bounce all over the place. Similar to what you've got along these back walls, right? There are tools that we can use to make that more accessible for classroom space. So my answer under this one might not be as simple as done. However, it is, you have been heard, that classroom space has been filled, and in fact, we want to make that one a little bit bigger because we have the other classroom space as well. All right, my next question on your sheet there is there adequate parking at this campus, relationship with schools nearby? So as you're probably aware, we have the opportunity to park cars on Sunday mornings at UPS, at what has been New Horizons, and at Mosley. Our understanding is we're going to have opportunity to continue to park there in all 3 of those locations on Sunday mornings. Now, we can't use UPS throughout the week, but the other 2 locations will still be open to us throughout the week. We have no belief that we're going to have less opportunity to park at what has been New Horizons, but given some of the changes they make, there may be opportunity for us to park there even more, depending on how Bay District Schools ultimately intends to use the property across the street. So we do still have the opportunity. I do think for us, as we're inviting friends to church, we may want to be mindful that parking that is not contiguous to the building, that requires us to cross Minnesota Avenue, may feel like a mental barrier. But if you think about the walk that we had to accomplish when we were at Transmitter, from the farthest gravel lot close to Transmitter up to the campus, that walk across the street, I've not measured it out, but I believe it's probably shorter, right, if we're coming from the New Horizons lot over here. So we do believe that we'll have adequate parking.
What about the pantry parking on the days that we distribute food at the pantry? You're talking 300 to 350 cars. If something changes, where are we going to be on that?
So I don't believe we've ever communicated that we're going to have less of a parking footprint than we do presently.
Yeah.
So if the question is, are we going to have at least what we have now, I think the answer is going to be yes to that, because we're not extending, right, place where we're going to take, for example, this wall behind me, we're not going to knock it out and take away all this parking spot. Now, we will still have to continue to use where we stage the folks over here across the street, right?
That's the thing I'm thinking about. If the schools, if there's vandalism or anything like this and they decide to close them, what do we do then?
Right. And I think that's a fair question, though I think the questions about if Bay District Schools does something different, that is at one level, that is in the what if category, and I can what if my life away, right? And then secondarily, the relationship with Bay District Schools to date has been good, and I would hope that we'll continue to do that going forward with Mark McQueen and the rest of his team. Dick.
Yeah, first of all, I'm all for everything we're doing, except I'm concerned about the parking. I think we're making a big commitment based on what ifs as far as parking. I've been involved in a number of situations where people have said, yeah, we'll do that. And then when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, things change. So I would just like to know, we're going to do all this improvements, and obviously the reason is to grow, so the parking is going to be greater, not less, the need. It's going to be greater. And I just think a priority is getting the parking element squared away before we commit to something else.
So, I'm sorry, did I have something else from the...
Hey, let me we've got a time for questions. Let Rudy and I get through this, and then we're going to take all the questions at once. I think it'll be easier for us to do that, okay? So.
Yep. Some of this, I think, on my next question, what will happen during construction, will actually touch on the parking question a little bit. I think there may have been some fear along the way that, as I said, that we may lose some parking during the construction, right? But our construction is going to be phased in this space behind this wall, right? We're going to begin with the children's section, and then we're going to do it in phases. So our goal is that we're going to get this one section complete, and then they'll move on to other sections along the way. We're going to minimize the effect to ministry in every way possible, particularly on Sunday mornings. So the worship space here is not going to be affected. When it comes to the flow of children and the youth where they go on Sunday mornings, we'll have opportunities for them to have space at all times. So back section construction is going on. We will have our current children's space here, and then once that's done in the back, then we can move them in the back and pivot the construction here to the front. And I think my next question, actually the next question goes to Craig. This one is on design build.
All right. Okay, yeah. Why the question was asked, why design build versus a competitive build or competitive bid? And this is one of the questions I'm answer as best I can for Richard and Jason, et cetera. But the decision was made last summer by the church council in consultation with the trustees. And if you're not familiar with the concept, there's essentially two main ways that we could build. It's with a architect bid process. The architect designs the building, puts it out for bid. We take the bids, and then we make a selection. May or may not be the low bid, etc. The other process is to go through design build, which you select your contractor, the builder, up front, and they're involved in the design process, putting everything together and all in kind of one seamless or hopefully seamless process. I just want to read, Richard sent me this answer when he found out yesterday he couldn't get back. Here's his one sentence answer to that question, the choosing design build, he said, gives us a guaranteed maximum price for proper budgeting, price transparency, with a proven local company that we can trust and work well with. Again, we went through this process with the leadership last year, deciding which way to go. I will tell you this, from my experience before I came to Lynn Haven, I was involved in 2 major building programs. Okay, one of them was an architect bid, the other was design build. And here's what I found in the design build was that it gives more flexibility to the owner, especially change orders. In a competitive bid, change orders have to be avoided like the plague because they are incredibly expensive, okay? I found that, and others would, I think, say this, that contractors love change orders because there's a way for them to bump up the money. In a design bid process, if you decide that you want to change something, you're only out what the cost of the actual change is and the 10% usually overhead that you're paying the contractor. So it's much easier to change things as you go along. There's price transparency. In a competitive bid, someone makes a bid, we don't know what that contractor is paying their subcontract. We just know what they're saying they're going to do the job for. In a design build, we have access to, one, all the bids that have already been received. We know what those are. And also when the invoices come in, we have access to all that. We see exactly what is being spent. So there's transparency on what the actual cost is. I found, and most folks would agree, that there's cost effectiveness. It reduces the cost of the project. And I've looked through literature. Most folks will say it's 10 to 20% cost savings, design build over a competitive bid. There's an expedited construction process. And this one I would put very high on my personal list is just the trust and the cooperation between the owner and the builder. That I have found that it creates a lot more trust, a lot more cooperation versus just, hey, I'm trying to get the job done as quickly and as cheaply as I can, versus, hey, we really want you to be happy with this project. So we can talk more about that, but that's our answer. So that decision was made at the outset. We believe that by monitoring the contract, we're still going to get all fair pricing all the way through. Okay? Will this cause us to incur debt? And will it impact our cash reserves? I'm going to let Rudy touch on that one, since that's going to be more of a future thing than it is on my watch. So.
Yeah, the simple answer is hopefully not, and that's part of what this conversation is all about, right? We're going to walk through the process outline here in a few minutes, and then based upon what happens during this season, Church Council will take the data before them and then make the next decision on whether or not we would incur debt. The conversations I've had to date are that if there is any debt, it would only be short-term construction loan kind of debt, and that's the goal based on the conversations we've had to date. Specifically, there was a part of the question, or one of the questions that we consolidated here, that were about operational cash reserves, the money that we have to kind of do the day in and day out business of the church. We are making sure that we have at least 3 months reserves in the operational budget, which we won't touch. That would also protect us if, God forbid, we were hit by another hurricane and we'd have to pay a deductible, right? So that number that we're keeping in the books is right around $400,000, and we would make sure to maintain that separate from any building funds. And speaking about funds, the question was asked, why don't we sell the transmitter property to finance this construction effort? And I'll hand that one back to Craig.
Oh, did he say something wrong there? This was probably one of the major questions, it along with the size of the classroom. That one, we had a lot of questions, but obviously this is of of great importance. And so I'm going to answer it as best I can. Again, trying to speak mainly for the church leadership, the church council on this one, okay? I want to repeat what was said at the earlier meeting, that the church council sees building here now and deciding what to do with transmitter as two separate issues. And hear me out. Here's what I want to explain, why they see that as two separate issues, obviously related, okay? This project is needed now, ASAP, to enhance our ministry and our mission. The proceeds from a sale at transmitter would not be immediate. And as a matter of fact, would probably take a year or years. Okay, and let me explain that, because I don't think everybody understands what would be involved in selling that property. Here's the first thing. We're not going to sell it today. We're not going to sell it tomorrow, because the congregation has no consensus on what to do with that property. Okay, let me mention a few things of what we could do with it. There are a number of you in this congregation that still want to rebuild at transmitter. Okay, as we mentioned at the previous meeting, that's just not feasible currently with what would be probably a $15 million plus price tag. But that still remains a possibility, and a lot of folks still hold that they would love to see us ultimately back someday at transmitter. Okay, so that's one opinion. Another one is that we use that property for some other purpose, that we could create Christian outreach ministries there, that it maybe could be some sort of housing or building a school there. There's been all sorts of, the Vision Committee visited this about 3 years ago, and I think there was 50 or 70 different ideas of what to do with that. So that exists. There's some folks that would hold the opinion, let's just hang on to it until God tells us what to do with that. And then the other thing that we could do is to go ahead and sell that property. So what I'm getting at is we would have to build the consensus of which one of those we're going to do. That's going to take some time. But selling the property isn't like selling the vacant lot next to your house. Okay? This is a 40-plus acre parcel of land. And based on kind of what we see as industry standards, if somebody were to propose and so we got to decide, okay, we got to decide we want to sell it. Then we put it on the market. We don't know what the market is going to bring us. But when somebody does make a proposal, it's almost certain that proposal, unless somebody's just doing it to put a couple cows on out there, and they're probably not, it's going to be a large-scale development. They're going to ask for a minimum of 270 days to do due diligence, okay, to find out whether it is suitable for their purpose. They will have, based on their price, how many lots they're trying to carve out. Well, they then have to go through environmental studies, they have to go through zoning meetings and get all those approvals. They have to do feasibility studies. And what we have seen is that they're going to ask for a minimum of 270 days with the opportunity to extend that at their discretion if they need longer. Okay, so you're looking at maybe up to a year just for them to decide. In the meantime, we would receive a very small down payment that wouldn't even necessarily be ours if it doesn't meet what they think they need to get out of it for their intended use. Also, what we've seen in these type of proposals, these sort of contracts, is that again, they could ask for even additional extensions, and during that time frame, we're not allowed to enter into any discussions with any other prospective buyers, which means if at the end of that time they decide, hey, it doesn't fit our needs, well, guess where we are? We're back at square one, okay? So it just takes a lot of time, and the church leadership feels like what we need now, okay? And so before that decision would be made to sell, even if we made it, again, there has to be consensus. The church leadership is not going to just decide tomorrow to sell that property. It's going to be a process like we're going through right now. There would be church meetings, there would be question and answer sessions, and then there would have to be a charge or a church conference to ultimately approve that sort of thing. Now, as I look at this, I'll just tell you, as I look, and it's hard for me to believe that 7 years have passed since the hurricane, but it has. And if I had it my way, these two things would have all come together. We would have already made the decision on what to do with the property and what to do about building here, but it didn't work that way. And honestly, I take some of it and I carry some of that with me, that I wish we had a better answer and we already knew, but I also know what we've been through over the last 7 years, and I also know it's very hard to make a decision about what to do with that property until we make a decision about what to do here. There's all these moving pieces, there's pieces of a puzzle. The bottom line is, this is where we're at right now. It's not, again, exactly my timing, but it is, I'm trusting it's God's timing. And so that's the answer to it. Why don't we sell it to finance? It's real. We can't sell it right now to finance this project, because if we did make a decision to sell it, that means delaying this project for a start date of at least a year and probably more. Okay? So with that, I want to just outline a few next steps, and then we're going to open it up for questions, and Rudy and I will do the best we can, or we will refer those to the council and we'll let them get back. Okay? So just talk about the next steps, Rudy. At least the starting point.
Yeah, sure. So for sure, Craig talked about one of the things we've got to figure out is we've got to decide what to do with the Transmitter Road property. So when I walk through the door and I'm high-fiving everybody and we're talking about all the great things that God is going to do in and through us, one of the things that I know that we're going to do is we're going to put together a committee to do just that, right? What I think is very interesting, both in the feedback that we received through email and one-on-one conversation, and even conversations that I've had with others, is that we have people who assume, well, everybody in the congregation thinks this way about Transmitter, right? And so I don't think that's the case. We actually have a broader view of hopes, dreams, or understandings of what is best next for Transmitter. So in the same way that I walk in the door as being the lead pastor, and I'm probably going to say to the staff, hey, you've known me for a long time. We all have some preconceived notions about how we operate. Let's slow down and make sure Rudy doesn't know anything, right? And make sure that I don't miss anything in the process. I think the committee that we put together to discuss Transmitter, we need to do that same thing. We need to say there are some, as Craig referenced, who's still very passionate about, I want to build there again and put a church on it, so to speak, or somebody else's school, or somebody else says, no, absolutely not. This here at Minnesota Avenue is home. Let's sell that thing and move on. So we need to slow down the process, take time, listen to one another, and then work through council so we as a congregation can make that decision together. So that will be the next step relative to Transmitter Road. And I'll turn it back over to Craig for steps beyond that for today.
And then this is the big next step, is that starting this morning, we're asking folks to make a pledge to this From Generation to Generation Building Fund, to fund this $1.5 million that we need. And let me just give you a couple details about it. I'm asking over the next 32 days, I guess, from now to July 31st, that you prayerfully consider making a pledge to a campaign. And that campaign then would be collecting money from June 1st, starting this next week, for 18 months through the end of December 2026. Okay? And we're going to, before you leave today, we're going to distribute some pledge cards that look very much like this. You could also make your pledge online. We would ask you to turn that in again before July 31st. You can put it in one of the offering boxes. There's going to be a box outside the office. We want to treat those as confidential because that's important information. So be sure you put it in one of those boxes, get it into the church office at some time. If you choose to be a part of this effort, that would be the period. This is, and I think it's on, it's in some small print there. You'll see it on the card. I just want to emphasize this at the start. I'm going to say something else about it later. But this is a gift that is over and above. It is in addition to your regular giving to the ministry budget of the church. Okay? We bring our tithes, our offerings to the Lord to support His ongoing work. This is a free will offering okay? Over and above that to support this particular effort, okay? Now, so we're looking at the next month through July 31st to decide what the congregation is willing to support in this effort. And based on that, the church council will get together and they're going to decide at that point in time how to proceed. Kind of the best case, if there was adequate funding, there would be then charge and or church conference approval in somewhere the August, September timeframe and would allow us to begin construction right after that. Okay, so that's the questions answered. That's the next steps. What other questions do you have? And then you have it on your outline, but if you will allow me to spend and I'd ask you if you at all possible hang around, but I do want to share something that God's laid on my heart just with y'all before we close. So I do want to double back. I know Rudy addressed it, but we had a couple questions about parking. I just want to make sure, did we say anything adequate there? All I can say is we're going to pass it on to the church council. I will give you just my take on that one, is that we have talked to Bay District Schools. We have no evidence from them whatsoever that we would lose any of the parking across the street. Parking, a concern, but for me, as a pastor who thinks a lot about that and all the barriers to growth, it is a potential barrier, but I really don't think it is a showstopper. Again, we have adequate parking over here. We also need to think creatively. We've got parking that probably would be available. We've asked for it before for special events, but we have parking at Tyndall that can be used. Is that ideal? No. But I've gone to churches where I had to wait on a shuttle bus and I had to go blocks to a downtown church parking in a parking garage, but I wanted to be there. I wanted to be a part of what God was doing. There's parking, there's a property around us, depending on what we decide to do with the transmitter property, what kind of revenue we have, there is the chance of buying some additional property around us that could also be parking. So from my point of view, it's a concern, a legitimate concern, needs to constantly be thought about and talked about, but it's not a showstopper. But that will all be passed on to the church. Y'all heard all this, right? So they're going to enter into that. Anything else you want to say on that subject, Rudy? Or?
I just want to piggyback what Craig said at the end. He had not gotten there yet. A lot of these conversations are not going to be about whether or not the concerns are valid. The question is, what's the next step that we should take, right? And I think that's what we as a congregation have got to decide. Dick referenced it from his point of view. Me referenced it from my point of view. This is not about whether or not we're going to need parking at some point. It's about sequencing, right? And to my mind, the plan that the council has put together and laid out, I think that is the next appropriate sequence item. I will roll out here and just tell you something that I think we also need to prayerfully consider. If we have healthy growth in a way that we assume that we need to, for those of you especially who attend the 9:30 service, we've got to figure out space for that 9:30 service. The immediate conversation then is going to be, are we going to readjust service times where the folks who are worshiping in the 9:30 style will have another option? If you're breaking up those service times, then all of those people are not parked here at the same time, right? So it's that deal where each individual, hour of the Sunday morning will have perhaps less parking if we have more services that can kind of bridge that gap. All right, we had a question, I think, over here.
A microphone?
I think she's got it.
I love what you just said at the end there about the parking, that we could break up two services so we could have more parking.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a great point. My question is the timeline on the construction. It's my understanding then that Reliant is ready to get going whenever we make our final decision to begin, start striking that hammer, right? So what is the timeline for their construction?
Yeah, nobody's going to answer that one except for I will, because I won't be around to hold me to it. We think it could be as soon as 10 to 12 months total from beginning to end, but it's construction. But we believe, and again, I think Rudy referred to it, that it would be phased in. The first thing would be, you really won't see much of it. It'll be this children's area. We think we could open that children's area while we're then doing some of the things up front. But somewhere 9 to 12, 10 months, they think under a year to get it done. And in particular, because it's, again, everything, the shell's there, it's just doing the other work. Okay, so Susan, then, oh, you got the mic, so you get to go first there.
About the food pantry, will it be postponed during construction? Are we going to continue it? Will there be a garage door on that side, or will it be canceled?
Yeah, you want to, actually, there is going to be, that doesn't show up on the drawing, but there is going to be a garage door that's in the back is going to be moved. There's still going to be a garage door in the storage area. Can't answer that, Rudy. You know, again, we don't know. We just don't see that big of a impact by and large. So I think it would probably be able to. I mean, we're talking 6 times a year. I think it could still be carried out while construction's going on.
Right. I will say I've come into this a little bit late on some of the meetings, but as we've talked about where the new roll-up door would be and timing, it might be as simple as we swap a month or so with St. Dominic, you know, and we take other months. But my hope and intent would be that that is a vital ministry where we're serving our community, so we'll have as minimal impact as possible.
Susan?
Okay. When you had the map up of what was being done, the diagram, it says that you are changing the largest classroom, and you actually said that it's going to be grandfathered, that it's going to have that space. That's our prayer room. So where is our prayer room going to be?
So we're adding a prayer room. That's blurry. I think it's that one, right, Craig? Down on the bottom. The far left. Right. So
That's a.
down.
What's that? That's going to be turned into 3 spaces now. One of them a dedicated prayer room that'll be open all the time.
All right.
This one.
Not 24 hours a day, but anytime the building's open, you would be
Okay.
access to it. And then there's 2 counseling rooms there.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
So yeah, the prayer room's there, and then I'll do my best Vanna White. This is the classroom that we're talking about right now, which presently sits off the gym. You've been in there? And so the initial plan had a wall separating it, turning it into 2. The feedback we got was that there's a desire for more space, and we think that's wise. So we took out that wall, and then there was some storage back here, which we'll knock out and actually give that extra space.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You guys have talked about having the child care secure. I'm just curious I'm right here, Craig.
Oh, I got you.
I'm just curious what that looks like. What does that mean exactly? Do we have an idea, or more than what we've got now? Or
Well, yeah, I don't know if you want to answer, but go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll give a go, and he'll correct me to 100%. So, Megan, if you look, if you're in the lobby and you're walking down the long hallway that we're creating with the gym, you go down that hallway and then you'll go to kind of your 1 o'clock and you'll go into the children's space. What you'll note there is there are no kitten doors there that close off the children's space. So right now we do our best to check children in and out with parents, but that space is open, right? And kids can run off. My kids do that. I'm sure yours never. Right. So we will actually be able to, in worship times, have those doors shut, and we will have more positive control of the kids, where when mom and dad are coming to pick them up, we're doing it there, and that's an important part of this build. Anything more on that, Craig?
No, just you see there's a kind of the space. It's a check-in space that's recessed area, and as of right now, as they've talked about procedures. Again, if you have elementary age kids, you'll check them in there, and that's as far as you'll go. They'll then go on into the larger room. If you have nursery, parents would have access to that hallway, but only, again, in between times. And once we get them in there, those doors are shut, locked, and so there's one way in, one way out. Much easier to both control the kids, but mainly control an access to the children. And they also don't have they're going to have to be moving from here to here over to the community room or wherever it might be. Okay.
What's going on with the large space without anything on it in the bottom left corner?
Just future, but mainly storage.
Okay. I wasn't a part of the first session, so
Yeah.
I have a bunch of stuff up there where you're going to put the youth area at. I'm wondering if I need to start talking to district or conference on additional storage for disaster ministries. Because I have a large amount of stuff in that corner that'll have to go someplace.
Yeah, I think there's still going to be, again, Daniel's right there. We've got, I think that it would be adequate. We're going to cut it in half, but I think we still probably could have it if we use it, as you said, like what you're doing for disaster response in these tall things. We just got to become more efficient, not quite as spread out as we are right now.
Thank you.
We've got a couple down here, Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand that the decision of when and how to proceed will be decided after the period of giving is decided. And so my question is, the giving period is July 1 through December 31 of 2026. Is there a possibility that if we see a good response early, that we would start earlier or decide earlier and continue construction during that period?
Craig, you want to speak to that one?
Yeah, well, since I'll still be the pastor here for a month, if a $1.5 million check comes in tomorrow, we'll call a church council meeting right away. But yeah, I think that's just, we felt like we needed to give folks adequate time. Not everybody obviously is here today, so we got to get the news out, and so we're looking at 30 days to try and do it. But that's up to the council. I think y'all would agree they'll move as quickly. Oh, no. Oh, was that what you were saying?
Yes.
Starting after the giving period?
No, I guess.
No. Okay.
Let me
Yeah,
simplify
I'm
it.
sorry.
Depending on the response that we get on the front end of this, is there a chance that we could start construction before December 31, 2026?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I thought I said that, but let me repeat it. So best case, here's the best case, that we get an incredible response over the next month. Then the church council is going to meet 1st of August and decide what to do and how to proceed. And we could have either charge, or it requires a charge or church conference to approve this kind of thing. We could have that as early as August or September. And if that were the case, then the contract would be signed and we'd be off and running.
Okay, so I guess that's really what I'm,
Yeah, so best
essentially-
case, we could actually have construction starting in September,
I
probably.
guess there's the possibility that we could borrow on,
Yeah,
promise of
and again,
future
that's all
receipts.
part of that decision.
Understood.
We're counting that when y'all make a commitment, that y'all are going to follow through. There's going to be some faith involved that you're going to follow through with that. So but we got $1.5 million to draw from. So there's a long construction, a lot of construction draws we can make. And, again, he's going to have to, I'm making the appeal today, and you're going to hear from me in just a moment. But he's going to one that's going to also remind folks, if you have the capability to give, the sooner the better, because of that allows us to get that going. Okay, so I think, and Rudy mentioned that when it was, are we going to incur debt? Well, we would hope at most it would be some short term, just a construction loan to try until that money.
Yeah,
comes in.
in a perfect world, as he says, we start with the money we have in the bank. Folks who are able to give up front then, adds more to that account, and then we can cash flow it. That would be perfect, right? But if we have gaps along the way, then maybe we have to go that direction.
Let me, before you ask your question, Kim, I know there's one over here. Here's what, it's, I want to stop questions for right now at 11:38, so we got 2 minutes, or pause the questions, let me say that, because I've told the children's care workers that I'm going to dismiss y'all at 11:45. I do have something I want to share with you, and it's going to take, I think, 5 minutes, but it'll take 7 minutes or 8 minutes or more, if you know me. And so I want to do that, and then we'll come back and we'll field more questions at that point, or the church council, Rudy and I will be here as long as we want. So real quickly, we'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then let me pause those questions for a moment. Kim?
So when we did the construction on this building after the hurricane, did we do a design build, and was it with Reliant or a different company? Just curious.
It essentially, well, we actually went out on a bid, but thing changed so dramatic. The original bid, and we only had 2 bidders, right?
We had a couple, but there were 2 complete bids.
Yeah, 2 that really were complete. So we did that, but in essence, it became a design build because the original contract was a fraction of what it was because we were just going to put it back like it was. No, just bare concrete. None of the stuff that you see here was in that. And so then we employed Dan Cook as an architect, and he worked in conjunction, and it was not with Reliant South. It was with GAC, who's no longer in business, but that was our contractor. All right, Patricia, you get the last question, then if y'all allow me to share something with y'all. Hang on 10 seconds.
So I thank God what happened today and what we have seen about the well and the youth, but they are not here today. How are you going to involve them so they feel like this is part of them? You're saying generation to generation. Their money is also good. They make money. They use it wrong. We need that money. Number 2, prayer room. Would it be soundproof? Please make it soundproof. Some of us just talk to God. I don't know if we listen, but we really talk. Number 3, the special needs classroom. Is that for the AOK students like they meet during the day here, or is special needs? Because some parents right now sit outside because our kids have behaviors. We want those parents into church. Will it be the special needs Sunday school like we know? Our kids can go there and we're not going to be called because they know we have trained professionals who can stay with them like they stay with them in school, please. And then, as Pastor Rudy mentioned, one more thing, sorry, time. We're talking about parking, we're talking about this and that, we're talking about the expansion of the kids, but this church is going to grow. Sanctuary will be small. This room will be small. And I think he talked about it. What's the plan for it?
The sanctuary, because when I become the pastor, there's going to be 10,000 people here.
Yeah, I know. and I will be cheering, believe me. Why don't you answer what you want there? Let me just real quick, and because I want to give you a quick word before I share. But with soundproof, we heard that. The children, I will say, I don't know, I have a huge, not a regret, but we actually contemplated what we're going to do for a offering for a vacation Bible school, okay? And we decided to do it for Honduras children for uniform, and that's a great cause, but the goal, if you didn't hear, was $2,400, and they raised $9,400. We considered doing that for the building fund, that would be their first contribution, but we hadn't made this all public, what we were doing, so I owe y'all $7,000 that maybe more would have come in. But yeah, we're going to include the kids. The special needs room, we're not exactly sure what all it would be. We just feel it's important that we create a space, whether it's for kids that might be have some autism issues or other special needs, that we just have a space that we say we're welcoming, and so we're open to do whatever we need to. So that's not designated for AOK. They might use it, but no, it's for regular ministries, that it would be a place. Some churches have just kind of a quiet room just to go in for kids that need some quiet time. So we're not sure what it is. We're just saying we're open and believe that we need to minister to those folks. And so anything you want to say about the other question, and then just in general?
Yeah, sure. So I think relevant to the question about the sanctuary and growth and desire for this congregation, Scripture says the Word of God does not return void. The way that God reveals himself through natural created order is healthy organisms grow, right? So our expectation is that the Lord will continue to move through us because we'll continue to seek to be faithful to him, and our expectation is that growth will happen, right? All joking aside, to this point in my ministry, I have never had that Pentecost experience where we've had 3,000 added in a day, right? We have seen healthy, sustained growth in different places that I've been a part of, and we've certainly seen it under Craig's leadership. If you think about kind of the cut that we took from Hurricane, COVID, and the denomination stuff, if you look at our numbers over the last few years, we have what I would call healthy, sustained growth. So I think conversations like these, that will not always be connected to money, but they might be connected to how do we change our operating system in a given moment, will happen over and again. So I do think, just frankly, if God is good in a way where we see it in an increase in numbers for Sunday morning worship, I think the next conversation would be about having another service of the 9:30 worship style. I will say transparently, I don't see a future where I would recommend anytime in the near term that we would have a sanctuary the size of First Baptist Panama City, right? It's very important to them that they get everybody together in one space, and that is a great church model, but given the resources that we have and the incremental growth that we seek to get there, we don't see that. So I think the growth stages that we see before us are as I think council has led the way. And I've actually I was not very much a part of these meetings. They were before I was on staff, and I affirmed them. I think it's the right decision there, right? I think that's what I've got. All right.
I do want, before I share this final remark, I do want to address that one because you're not going to hear much more from me on some of these kind of church business things. I would just keep this in the back of your mind. I would highly discourage, let's say this church has potential to be 2,000 in worship. I would discourage building a worship center for 2,000. You want this room right here and fill it 4 times or even 8 times, 250, 8 different times. I'm just telling you, I've watched it over my 3 decades of ministry, and some churches are really suffering incredible consequences of building huge places, and especially in the current world, the way we're relating to each other. Churches that have 10 services with 200 in them are much healthier and stronger than churches that have 2,000 in one. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We're, again, well positioned for a long time. You might just have to work him a whole lot to do it. But I went to a church in Seoul, Korea over 30 years ago that had 25,000 seat sanctuary, but they filled it 8 times a Sunday. 200,000 people, but 8 times the preacher preached on Sunday, and it was the most dynamic church I've ever seen. Okay, they didn't build a stadium for 100,000. They just kept doing it. So with that, here's what I want you to hear from me, and I'll probably go over just a few minutes. But I want to ask you this morning, for y'all that are here and everybody else I hope will watch this on video and we'll get the word out. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to prayerfully consider to this fund that we're opening up, just from generation to generation, a $10,000 gift. Okay, a $10,000 gift. If we got 150 of those, it's victory. Okay, and I'll just tell you, we have currently about 400, we have 400 because I know numbers. We have 417 giving units, families in the church. Okay, so if we could secure 150 of those, $10,000 gift. Now, I understand that everybody can't do that, but some people can and some people can do more. So I'm asking you to consider, just think that through, $10,000. One of those, maybe multiple ones, maybe some of you have 2 or 3 grandkids and you are at a place in your life where you could give one in each one of their honors. Maybe you can't do that, and I certainly understand it, but some portion of that, you can do something. Maybe a tenth of a $10,000, $1,000. That works out to $55 a month during the giving period, that you could make some sacrifices to do that. I've been involved in a number of efforts like this in my previous church. We always had, no matter what the campaign was called, like from generation to generation, we always had a subtitle, and it was this: not equal gifts, but equal sacrifice. We cannot all give the same amount, and we don't need to either feel boastful about what we can give, or we don't need to feel bad about what we can give. We can't all give the same amount, but we can all make a similar and equal sacrifice, whatever that might be, whether it's $100,000, $10,000, or $10. Okay? But we can all do something. And ultimately, what you give or what you decide not to give, that's between you and God. There's no pressure. We're not checking on folks to see who's doing what. I want to reiterate what I said earlier, especially as I hand the reins on to this guy. Do not divert money away from the ministry budget. We need those resources to keep doing what we're doing. we don't need a building and then no ability to carry out the ministries for it. You'll see on the pledge card, your pledge, your commitment can be changed at any time. This is what you believe God's telling you to do. If your circumstances change, your mind changes, you can change that, but I would ask you to keep the church informed because we're making decisions. And I say we, it's the church council is going to be making those decisions based on those pledges, believing that that's what God's going to provide us. I will tell you, if today or in the days to come, you're the only one that makes a pledge, okay, and nobody else does, you don't have to give it, okay, because we might not go there. Yeah, I say that tongue in cheek, okay? But if you make a pledge, even if the program doesn't go on, you can give it if you want to. We'll receive that. And this is where I want to end. That's what Lee and I feel led to do. What I'm asking you right now, this $10,000, I'm always reluctant to say God told me because I get a lot of things wrong. But as best I could, as I really thought about this and knowing where we're at now, where I'm at, kind of on the way out, I just sensed God saying, you need to make this ask, and the figure of $10,000 came to mind, okay? If I had my way, I would have us do a campaign, a capital campaign. We'd spend several weeks, probably a month, talking about this, getting consensus, bringing you up to speed, but I don't have time to do that. And so I just sensed as I asked God over the last month or 6 weeks, what do I need to do? What can I do to help with this process? He just said, make an ask. Just ask people to give. You don't have to do all the teaching. You don't have to figure it all out. Just ask them. And in my mind, I thought about it, well, that kind of sounds like God because it might actually speed up the process because I'd drag it out over months. I'd continue to send out letters and do all sorts of things. So I'm just simply asking you. And that's what Lee and I are going to do. We're making a commitment that we think fits this from generation to generation theme. Most of you know my mom died in early 2019. Didn't have a huge estate, but she had some money left, and she left that to my sister and I. And at that time, Lee and I promised that we were going to give a tithe of that to Christ Church. You know what was happening in 2019? There was a lot of needs going on here. And so we gave a significant amount of that tithe, but there was a part of it we didn't give. We kept back. And so we're going to give that. We're going to finish out the tithe of my mom's estate, but then we're also going to add to that some money of our own that we want to invest in the next generation. And so what we're going to do is next month we're going to give $10,000 up front. And then we're pledging to give an additional $5,000 somewhere over the next few months of the campaign. And so with that, I would just say to you, before anything else is done, we're 1% of the way there, okay? I promise you, you're 1% of the way there. As Lee and I have thought about it and prayed about it, I just became aware that, because there's a part of me that says, well, I'm not even going to be a part of what's going on. But here's what I've learned. I have never given a dime to the cause of Christ that I've ever regretted. I have never regretted any gift I've ever given. So even if I gave this money and y'all decide, oh, we can't build right now, that's okay. Hang on to it. Do something good with it. We're fine with that. I'm not going to start regretting those things now, okay? I love this church, and I really believe the best days are yet to come. Man, I hope this place does blow. I really, really do. I'll be a little bit jealous, okay? But not really. Man, y'all have some incredible leadership that's coming on board. I just believe there's some incredible things yet to happen. And what Lee and I want to do is we just want to say we want to invest in what God is doing here. I'm going to close with this. It's an object lesson. I love living in Northwest Florida, but I miss being in Central Alabama, okay? This time of the year. This time of the year, probably even this weekend, we would have made a trip up to Clanton, Alabama, which is the peach capital of Alabama, and no regards to Georgia. They think it's the peach capital of the world, but nonetheless, I would be getting some peaches. I love peaches. You probably heard this story, but it goes like this. There was this old guy, and he was 90 years old, was found one day. He was out planting little peach seedlings. And one of his neighbors saw what he was doing and said, "Man, what are you doing?" You know, that is never going to produce any peaches while you're still alive. And the old guy said, that doesn't matter. He said, "I've been eating peaches from trees that other people planted all my life. And now I want to plant some trees that would bear fruit for other people to eat." And if I were going to figure out what a logo is for this campaign, probably wouldn't work. But in my mind, here's what it is. It would be a peach that I'd put on it. That's what we're doing. We're just planting some peach trees. Little seedlings, little saplings. I don't know what's going to come from it, but I believe that it's going to cause other people to eat the fruit of God's kingdom. And I personally, and Lee joins me in this, we cannot wait to see what the bumper crop is that gets produced through this effort and a whole bunch of others. I might see it here on earth. I might see it from the other side. It doesn't really matter to me, but we want to be a part of it. And I'm just telling you, we've prayed about it. This is what we want to do, and I'm simply asking you to do the same. And so this is really strange for me as a pastor, but I do not, unless God has spoken to you clearly today, I do not want you to turn in a commitment today, okay? Don't do it, all right? Unless God is just, if he said clearly, do it, fine. I want to ask you to do what Lee and I have done. We've had some time to think about it and pray about it. I just ask you to prayerfully consider, does God want you to participate in it, or is this just not the right timing for you to do that? And then whatever God tells you, just trust him and obey. I was going to have y'all pass this out, but we'll just have everybody, do not go out the door without taking one of these pledge cards. Will you do that? I'll just get people at each one of the doors, okay? That's it. Let me pray. God, first of all, thank you for what you're doing in this church, what you've done. Wow, what we witnessed here today. And Lord, in my mind's eye, just see that as a fraction of all that you want to do. The lives that are changed. And Lord, I think this renovation project is a part of that. It might be, it might not be. Lord, I just don't know. I think it is, as best I can discern it. And so, Lord, it gets my full-fledged support. But Lord, I just pray for Rudy. I pray for all the church leaders. I pray for this whole congregation that in the days and weeks to come, you're going to make it really clear if this is the right thing to do. And if it is, Lord, just let your hand be all over it. Grant us success. If it's some other way that you want us to go about things to reach our generation and the next generation, then so be that. But God, I just ask in Jesus' name that you would do something that is God-sized here. That nobody could say, oh, it's because of a great pastor or wonderful staff or because of some friendly, generous people. That people would just look at what is going on at Lynn Haven Methodist and say, it's God. It's God from beginning to end. There's no explanation. And so, Lord, do what you do best. Just bring the increase and do it for the cause of Christ and for the glory of your name. Amen.